The morning sun filtered through the tall pine trees as Jack Miller adjusted his backpack. He took a deep breath of the fresh mountain air. This was where he belonged. Alone in the wild, far from the noise of cities and the problems of people. Jack was 36 years old with a weathered face and strong hands that showed years of outdoor work. His brown hair was cut short for practicality, and his blue eyes missed nothing as they scanned the forest around him. 2 years ago, he had quit his job as a park ranger to become a wilderness guide. He preferred being on his own, tracking animals, and studying plants. Sometimes he led small groups of tourists through the Colorado forest to make money, but today he was by himself. He followed a narrow dirt path that wound between the trees. His boots made almost no sound on the soft ground. Jack knew these woods better than he knew any town or city. He could name every tree, identify every animal track, and find water even in the driest season. Nature made sense to him in a way people never did. The morning was peaceful. Jack spotted deer tracks and the marks where a bear had scratched a tree trunk. He stopped to photograph a rare wildflower for his collection. The only sounds were bird calls and the gentle rustle of leaves in the breeze. Then he heard it. A scream. High and sharp, it cut through the quiet forest like a knife. Jack froze, listening. The scream came again, weaker this time. It was a human voice, and it was coming from somewhere near the creek about half a mile ahead. Without hesitation, Jack began to run. His feet found the safest path automatically as he moved between trees and jumped over fallen logs. The screams had stopped. By the time he reached the small stream, Jack looked around, breathing hard from his run. "Hello?" he called. "Is someone there?" A weak voice answered from his right. "Help, please." Jack pushed through some bushes and found her. A woman was lying on the ground near the stream. She was in her late 20s with blonde hair pulled back in a ponytail. Her hiking clothes were expensive but practical. She was clutching her ankle and her face was very pale. A water bottle had fallen beside her, the water spilling onto the ground. "Snake," she managed to say, pointing weakly to some rocks nearby. Jack caught a glimpse of a diamond pattern as something slipped away into the undergrowth. A rattlesnake. Jack quickly knelt beside the woman. "I'm Jack," he said calmly. "I'm going to help you. What's your name?" "Olivia," she whispered. Her eyes were wide with fear and sweat beaded on her forehead. "It bit me. About 10 minutes ago." Jack nodded and gently moved her hands away from her ankle. 2 small puncture marks were visible just above her hiking boot. The area was already swelling and a bruise was forming. Jack knew rattlesnake. Venom could be deadly if not treated quickly. "I'm going to take care of you, Olivia," he said, keeping his voice steady. "I have training for this." He opened his backpack and pulled out a small kit. During his years as a ranger, Jack had learned wilderness first aid. He always carried a snake bite kit when he hiked. "This might hurt," he warned as he cleaned the bite area. Olivia nodded bravely, but tears leaked from the corners of her eyes. Jack worked quickly but carefully. He used a suction device to remove some of the venom, then wrapped the ankle to slow the spread of what remained. "Are you alone?" Olivia asked, her voice growing weaker. "Yes," Jack replied, "and there's no cell signal out here. The nearest ranger station is about 6 miles back." Olivia tried to say something else, but her eyes suddenly rolled back. She slumped unconscious against the ground. Jack checked her pulse. It was rapid but still strong. The venom was affecting her, but she was still alive. Jack knew he had to get her to medical help fast. The snakebite wouldn't likely be fatal with his first aid treatment, but she needed anti-venom at a hospital. 6 miles was too far for her to walk, and she was unconscious anyway. He would have to carry her. Jack quickly gathered branches and used cord from his pack to create a simple stretcher with his tarp. He carefully placed Olivia on it, securing her so she wouldn't fall off. Before he started the journey back, he noticed something glinting around her neck. It was a gold locket with some kind of design on it. Some sort of family crest, he thought, though he didn't recognize it. Her hiking gear was also top quality, much more expensive than what most hikers used. Who was this woman alone in his forest? Jack pushed the question aside. It didn't matter who she was. She needed help, and he was the only one who could provide. Jack lifted the stretcher and began the long walk back to the ranger station. The path that had been easy on his way in now became a challenge. He had to move carefully to keep the stretcher level. Every 30 minutes he stopped to check Olivia's condition and give her small sips of water when she briefly regained consciousness. The sun climbed higher in the sky. Jack's shoulders and arms burned with the effort of carrying the stretcher, but he didn't stop. Sweat soaked his shirt and his legs felt like lead. Still he continued on, one foot in front of the other. One more step, one more mile. During one of their brief rest stops, Olivia opened her eyes. "Where?" she asked weakly. "I'm taking you to get help," Jack told her, helping her drink a little water. "Try to rest." "Thank you," she whispered. Her hand moved too, the gold locket around her neck touching it as if for comfort. "My father gave me this," she murmured, half delirious. "He said, 'Always remember who we are.'" She drifted back into unconsciousness before Jack could ask what she meant. It didn't matter. Getting her to safety was all that mattered now. Mid-afternoon, Jack's body was screaming for rest. His muscles trembled with exhaustion. But through the trees he finally saw the wooden roof of the ranger station. Relief flooded through him, giving him a final burst of energy. "Help!" he called as he approached the small building. "Medical emergency." 2 rangers rushed out, their faces showing shock as they saw Jack with his makeshift stretcher. "Rattlesnake bite," Jack explained quickly as they helped him bring Olivia inside. "About 6 hours ago, I did what I could in the field. While one ranger radioed for a medical helicopter, the other helped Jack place Olivia on a cot. They checked her vital signs and applied ice to the bite area. The swelling had spread and her leg was discolored, but her breathing was steady. You probably saved her life," the older ranger told Jack. "Most people wouldn't know what to do out there." Jack simply nodded. He sank onto a bench, his legs finally giving out. As the rangers tended to Olivia, he noticed her backpack, which he had carried along with her. A luggage tag hung from one strap, partially hidden. He could just make out the name Olivia Bennett. The name meant nothing to him. She was just a hiker who had been in the wrong place at the wrong time. Jack had done what anyone with his training would do. Once the helicopter came, his job would be done. He would go back to his solitary life in the wilderness, and she would return to whatever life she had come from. But as Jack watched the unconscious woman, he felt a strange connection to her. Something told him that rescuing Olivia Bennett from a snakebite was not the end of their story. It was just the beginning. The helicopter arrived within 30 minutes. Its loud blades cut through the peaceful forest sounds as it landed in the clearing near the ranger station. Jack watched from the porch as medical workers rushed out with a stretcher. They moved, quickly, checking Olivia's vital signs and asking Jack questions about the snakebite. "Rattlesnake diamond pattern. The bite happened about 6 hours ago," Jack explained to a female paramedic. "I used a suction device to remove some venom and kept the area below her heart level." The paramedic nodded with approval. "You did good work. Most people panic or do the wrong things. You may have saved her life." Jack shrugged. He wasn't looking for praise. He had simply done what needed to be done. As the medical team prepared to load Olivia into the helicopter, her eyes fluttered open. She looked confused until she saw Jack standing nearby. "You," she said weakly, reaching out a hand toward him. Jack stepped forward and briefly took her hand. "You're going to be fine," he told her. "They're taking you to a hospital now." Olivia tried to say something else, but the paramedics were already lifting her stretcher. Jack stepped back, considering his duty complete. He would return to his hike tomorrow after resting at the ranger station tonight. The older ranger, Bill, offered him a place to sleep and a hot meal, which Jack gratefully accepted. After a simple dinner of canned stew and crackers, Jack sat on the porch of the ranger station. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. He sipped a cup of coffee and tried to put the day's events behind him. Yet he found himself wondering about Olivia. Was she receiving proper treatment? Did she have family waiting for her? Quite a day you had, Bill said, joining Jack on the porch with his own cup of coffee. Not many hikers would have handled that situation so well. I was just in the right place, Jack replied. Bill nodded toward the darkening forest. That woman was lucky. If you hadn't come along when you did. He didn't finish the sentence. He didn't need to. Jack slept poorly that night, his dreams filled with snakes and gold lockets. He woke early, intending to continue his interrupted expedition. He had packed his backpack and was saying goodbye to Bill when they heard vehicles approaching. 3 black SUVs with tinted windows pulled up to the ranger station. Jack immediately felt uneasy. These were not the kind of vehicles normally seen at a remote ranger station. The doors opened, and several men in suits stepped out. They looked out of place against the rugged wilderness backdrop. A tall man with gray hair approached Jack and Bill. Despite the early hour, he was perfectly dressed in an expensive suit. His posture was straight and his eyes were alert and assessing. "Mr. Miller?" he asked, looking directly at Jack. Jack nodded cautiously. "Yes. My name is Richard Bennett. I'm head of security for Ford Industries." The man held out his hand, which Jack shook after a moment's hesitation. "I understand you rescued Olivia Bennett yesterday." Jack glanced at Bill, who looked just as confused as he felt. "I helped a woman named Olivia who had a snake bite," Jack confirmed. "I don't know anything about Ford Industries." Richard's expression softened slightly. "Of course. Olivia is the daughter of Charles Bennett, the founder of Ford Industries. She's been missing for almost 2 days. Her hiking group reported her separation from them during a storm. We've had search teams combing these mountains." This information surprised Jack. He had assumed Olivia was just a solo hiker like himself. "She was alone when I found her," he said. "About 6 miles from here, near Coyote Creek." Richard nodded and made a note on his phone. "The doctors say she's going to make a full recovery, thanks to your quick action. Ms. Bennett has been asking for you. She wants to thank you personally." Jack shook his head. "That's not necessary. I'm glad she's okay, but I need to get back to my expedition." One of the other suited men stepped forward. "Sir, Ms. Bennett was very insistent. The company helicopter is waiting to take you to the hospital in Denver." "I don't need a helicopter ride," Jack said firmly. "And I don't need thanks." Richard studied Jack with interest. "Mr. Miller, I've worked for the Bennett family for 20 years. Olivia doesn't make requests lightly. Whatever your plans are, I'm sure they can wait a day. Ford Industries would be happy to compensate you for your time." Jack was about to refuse again when Bill spoke up. "Jack, maybe you should go. Make sure she's really okay. You can always come back to finish your expedition." After a moment of consideration, Jack reluctantly agreed. He wasn't comfortable with the idea of riding in a helicopter to meet some rich woman, but a part of him did want to see that Olivia had recovered. He gathered his backpack and followed Richard to the waiting helicopter. The flight to Denver took less than an hour, but to Jack it felt much longer. He had never liked cities, and as the wilderness gave way to roads and buildings, he felt increasingly out of place. The helicopter landed on the roof of a large hospital. More men in suits were waiting to escort Jack inside. They led him through pristine corridors to a private wing of the hospital. Jack felt self-conscious in his dirty hiking clothes and muddy boots. Finally, they stopped outside a door, where 2 more security guards stood watch. "Ms. Bennett is awake and waiting for you," Richard said. "The doctors have limited her visitors to prevent fatigue, but she insisted on seeing you." Jack nodded and entered the room. It was large and bright, more like a hotel suite than a hospital room. Fresh flowers filled vases on every surface, and large windows offered a view of the mountains in the distance. Olivia was sitting up in bed, looking much better than when Jack had last seen her. Color had returned to her face, and her blonde hair was neatly brushed. She wore what looked like silk pajamas instead of a hospital gown. The gold locket still hung around her neck. "Jack," she said warmly when she saw him. "My wilderness hero." Jack felt uncomfortable with the description. "I just did what anyone would do," he said. "I'm glad you're feeling better." Olivia smiled. "The doctors say I'll be able to leave tomorrow. They also say that without your quick action, I might have lost my leg or worse. She gestured to a chair beside her bed. Please sit down. I want to hear exactly what happened. My memory is a bit foggy. Jack sat reluctantly and described finding her by the creek and carrying her to the ranger station. As he spoke, he noticed Olivia watching him with intelligent green eyes. She asked smart questions about his first aid techniques and knowledge of the forest. You really know those woods, she said when he finished his story. Richard tells me you used to be a park ranger. Jack nodded, surprised that she had asked about him. For 8 years. Now I work as an independent guide. Why did you leave the ranger service? Olivia asked. Jack hesitated. He didn't usually share personal details with strangers. I prefer working alone, he said simply. Before Olivia could ask more questions, the door opened and a doctor entered. I'm sorry to interrupt, Ms. Bennett, but it's time for your medication and rest. Olivia looked disappointed but nodded. Of course, doctor. She turned back to Jack. Will you come back tomorrow? There's something I'd like to discuss with you. Jack started to refuse, but something in her expression stopped him. I'll think about it, he said instead. As he left the room, Richard was waiting in the hallway. Ms. Bennett has arranged a hotel, room for you nearby, he said. The company would like to properly thank you for your help. Jack frowned. That's not necessary. I need to get back to the mountains. Richard handed him a business card. At least consider coming back tomorrow, as Olivia asked. A car will be waiting if you decide to accept her invitation. Jack took the card and put it in his pocket. As he left the hospital, he felt strangely torn. The city made him uncomfortable, and he didn't belong in the world of helicopters and private hospital rooms. Yet something about Olivia Bennett intrigued him. What could she possibly want to discuss with a wilderness guide? That night, in a hotel room nicer than any place he had stayed in years, Jack stood by the window looking at the distant mountains. He belonged there, not here. But tomorrow he would return to the hospital, just once more to make sure Olivia was truly recovering. Then he would go back to his solitary life in the wilderness, where things made sense, or so he told himself. The next morning, Jack woke up at dawn out of habit. For a moment he was confused by the soft bed and the city sounds outside his window. Then he remembered where he was, and why. He got up and looked out at the city of Denver spread below him. Cars already filled the streets and people hurried along sidewalks. It all seemed so different from his peaceful forest. After a quick shower, Jack put on the same clothes he had worn yesterday. A part of him felt he should dress better to visit Olivia in the hospital, but he didn't own any fancy clothes. He was a wilderness guide, not a businessman. If Olivia wanted to see him, she would have to accept him as he was. As Richard had promised, a black car was waiting outside the hotel. The driver, another man in a suit, opened the door for Jack. Good morning, Mr. Miller. I'll take you to the hospital to see Ms. Bennett. The hospital seemed less busy this morning. The same security guard stood outside Olivia's room, but they nodded to Jack with recognition. When he entered the room, he was surprised to see Olivia sitting in a chair by the window instead of in bed. She wore casual clothes, expensive looking, jeans and a simple blue sweater. Her blonde hair fell loose around her shoulders. The gold locket still hung around her neck. Jack, she said with a bright smile. I wasn't sure you would come. I said I would think about it, he replied, staying near the door. You look much better today. Olivia nodded. The doctors say I can leave this afternoon. The anti-venom worked well, and there won't be any lasting damage. She gestured to a chair across from her. Please sit down. I've ordered breakfast for both of us. As if on cue, a hospital worker brought in a cart with covered plates, fresh fruit, and a pot of coffee. Jack sat down reluctantly. The food smelled good, and he realized he was hungry. I want to thank you properly for saving my life, Olivia said as they began to eat. If you hadn't found me when you did, anyone would have helped, Jack said, uncomfortable with her gratitude. I'm just glad you're okay. Olivia studied him with interest. Richard told me more about you. You were a park ranger for 8 years, before becoming a guide. You know more about the Colorado wilderness than almost anyone. Jack shrugged. I like the mountains. They make more sense to me than cities. Is that why you were alone in the forest? No tour group? I was documenting plant species in that area. It's a personal project. Olivia's eyes lit up. Really? What kind of plants? Jack was surprised by her genuine interest. He found himself telling her about his work cataloging rare plants and tracking wildlife patterns. Olivia asked intelligent questions that showed she knew something about conservation and biology. You know a lot about this for someone who runs a big company, Jack said. Olivia smiled slightly. I don't run Ford Industries. Not yet, anyway. My uncle Gregory has been in charge since my father died 3 years ago. I'm just a board member until my 30th birthday next month. What happens then? According to my father's will, I take full control of the company. Olivia touched her gold locket, a gesture Jack had noticed before. This locket contains a small portrait of my father. He built Ford Industries from nothing. The company name comes from our family home. It's built like a modern fortress on a mountainside outside the city. Jack nodded, still not understanding why she had asked him to come back today. I should let you rest, he said, starting to stand up. Wait, Olivia said quickly. I haven't told you why I wanted to see you again. She took a deep breath. Fort Industries is starting a new environmental division focused on conservation of wilderness areas. We need someone who truly understands these ecosystems to help lead our projects. Jack stared at her. And you want me to recommend someone? Olivia laughed, a warm sound that surprised him. No, Jack, I want to hire you as our lead consultant. The position includes funding for your personal research projects and a salary that would allow you to expand your work significantly. Jack was speechless. This was the last thing he had expected. I'm not a businessman, he finally said. I don't belong in corporate offices. You wouldn't need to be in an office much, Olivia explained. Most of your work would be in the field, documenting and protecting the same wilderness areas you love, but your knowledge would help shape company policies that could protect thousands of acres of land. Jack stood up and walked to the window. The mountains were visible in the distance, calling to him. Why me? You could hire professional scientists, with degrees and publications. Olivia joined him at the window, moving carefully due to her injured ankle. We have those people already. What we need is someone with practical knowledge and genuine passion for the wilderness. Someone who sees the forest as more than data points or profit potential. She paused. Someone like you? Jack turned to look at her. Up close, he could see that her green eyes had small flecks of gold in them. I need to think about it, he said. Olivia nodded. Of course. Take all the time you need. She handed him a business card much nicer than the one Richard had given him. My personal number is on the back. Call me when you decide, either way. Just then the door opened and a man entered. He was in his 50s, with carefully styled gray hair and an expensive suit. His face looked somewhat like Olivia's, but his eyes were cold and calculating where hers were warm. Olivia, the car is ready, he said, then noticed Jack. I didn't realize you had a visitor. Uncle Gregory, Olivia said, her voice changing slightly. This is Jack Miller. He's the man who saved my life in the forest. Gregory Bennett looked Jack up and down, taking in his simple clothes and hiking boots. His smile didn't reach his eyes. Ah, the mountain man. The company is very grateful for your assistance with my niece's unfortunate accident. Jack disliked the man immediately, but kept his face neutral. It wasn't an accident. It was a snake bite. Gregory waved his hand dismissively. Yes, well, nature can be dangerous. That's why most people prefer civilization. He turned to Olivia. The board meeting has been rescheduled for tomorrow since you're being released today. We need to discuss the northern property acquisitions. Olivia nodded. I'll be there. She turned back to Jack. Thank you for coming today. Please think about my offer. Jack nodded and moved toward the door. As he passed Gregory Bennett, the older man put a hand on his arm. Mr. Miller, while we appreciate your heroics, I'm sure a man like you has better things to do than hang around Denver. The company has arranged compensation for your time. Richard, we'll handle the details. The dismissal was clear. Jack looked at Olivia, who seemed embarrassed by her uncle's behavior. "Goodbye, Olivia," he said. "I hope your recovery continues well." In the hallway, Richard was waiting. "Mr. Miller, I have something for you." He handed Jack an envelope. A token of the company's appreciation. Jack opened the envelope and found a check inside for $20,000. He stared at it in shock. "Ms. Bennett insisted," Richard said. "She wanted to make sure you were properly thanked." Jack slowly put the check back in the envelope. It was more money than he usually made in half a year of guiding tours. With this, he could buy new equipment and spend months on his research without worrying about income. "There's a car waiting to take you wherever you'd like to go," Richard added. "Back to your hotel, to the airport, or back to the ranger station if you prefer." Jack thought for a moment. The ranger station, he decided. It was time to get back to his world. As the car drove him away from the hospital, Jack looked at Olivia's business card. Her job offer was tempting in some ways. He could do real good with the resources of a company like Fort Industries behind him. But working for a corporation meant dealing with people like Gregory Bennett. It meant meetings and politics and everything he had left behind when he quit being a ranger. Yet as the city gave way to suburbs and then to open country, Jack couldn't stop thinking about Olivia. There was something genuine about her interest in conservation, and there was something about her that had gotten under his skin in a way no one had in a long time. By the time the car reached the ranger station, Jack still hadn't decided what to do. He thanked the driver and walked back into the familiar forest. The trees welcomed him home, but for the first time in years, Jack felt the wilderness might not be enough anymore. For 2 weeks, Jack tried to return to his normal life. He guided a small tour group through the mountains, showing them wildlife and teaching them about forest plants. He continued his own research, cataloging rare flowers and documenting animal tracks. But his mind kept returning to Olivia Bennett and her job offer. The check remained in his backpack uncashed. The money would help his research, but something held him back from using it. It felt too much like payment for a good deed, and Jack had never wanted rewards for helping others. One evening, as Jack sat by his campfire, he finally took out Olivia's business card. The mountains were peaceful around him, with only the sounds of the wind in the trees and distant owl calls. This was his home. Yet he found himself reaching for his satellite phone, the one modern device he carried for emergencies. Before he could change his mind, Jack dialed the number on the back of the card. It rang 3 times before Olivia answered. "This is Olivia Bennett." "It's Jack Miller," he said, suddenly uncertain why he had called. "Jack." Her voice brightened. "I was hoping you would call. Have you thought about my offer?" "I have," Jack admitted. "I have some questions about what the job would really involve." "Of course," Olivia said, "but it's hard to explain over the phone. Why don't you come to the fort tomorrow? I can show you what we're planning and introduce you to the current environmental team." Jack hesitated, but his curiosity won out. "Okay, just to talk." "Wonderful," Olivia said. "I'll send a car to the ranger station at 9 tomorrow morning." The next day, Jack found himself in another black car, this time traveling up a winding mountain road outside Denver. The driver, yet another man in a suit, said little during the journey. They passed through a security gate with armed guards, then continued up the road until they reached the fort. Jack had expected a large house, but this was something else entirely. Built into the side of the mountain was a massive structure of stone and glass. It did indeed look like a modern fortress, with tall walls and a central building that rose several stories. The grounds around it were beautifully landscaped, with native plants and trees arranged in natural-looking groups. The car stopped at the main entrance, where Olivia was waiting. She wore a simple blue dress and low heels, her blonde hair pulled back in a neat ponytail. She smiled when she saw Jack, who felt out of place in his usual flannel shirt and jeans. "Welcome to the fort," she said, extending her hand. "I'm so glad you came." Jack shook her hand, noticing she moved without any sign of the snakebite injury. "This is quite a house," he said, looking up at the imposing building. "My grandfather built the original structure," Olivia explained as she led him inside. My father expanded it. It's been the family home for 3 generations now. The interior was just as impressive as the outside. High ceilings, stone walls, and large windows that offered spectacular views of the mountains. Artwork hung on the walls, and the furniture looked both expensive and comfortable. "This way," Olivia said, leading Jack to an elevator. The environmental division offices are on the 3rd floor. As they rode up, Jack asked, "How's your ankle?" "Completely healed," Olivia said. "Thanks to you, there's not even a scar." She looked at him curiously. "Did you cash the check?" Jack shook his head. "Not yet." Olivia seemed about to say something more, but the elevator doors opened. They stepped out into a bright hallway with glass-walled offices on both sides. People worked at computers or gathered around tables with maps and diagrams. "This is our growing environmental team," Olivia said. "Scientists, researchers, conservation experts, all working to protect wilderness areas and develop sustainable practices." She introduced Jack to several team members, who seemed genuinely interested in his experience and knowledge. They showed him maps of land that Fort Industries had purchased for conservation, and projects to restore damaged ecosystems. "What do you think so far?" Olivia asked as they sat in a conference room after the tour. Jack was impressed despite himself. "Your team seems to know what they're doing. But I still don't understand why you need me." Olivia leaned forward. "Because you have something they don't. Real experience living in the wilderness, not just studying it. You understand it in a way they never will." Before Jack could respond, the door opened, and Gregory Bennett walked in. Today he wore a dark blue suit that probably cost more than Jack made in 3 months. "Olivia, I need you for the call with the Tokyo office," he said, then noticed Jack. "Mr. Miller, I'm surprised to see you here." "Uncle Gregory, I invited Jack to see our environmental division," Olivia explained. "I'm offering him the lead consultant position." Gregory's smile tightened. "I see. Well, I'm afraid that position hasn't been officially approved by the board yet, and we have several other candidates to consider." Olivia frowned. "The board approved the creation of the position last month, and as head of the environmental division, I have final say on hiring." "Of course," Gregory said smoothly, "but for such an important role, we should follow proper procedures. Mr. Miller lacks the formal qualifications that our other candidates have." Jack stood up. "I should go. This seems like a family matter." "No, please stay," Olivia said quickly. She turned to her uncle. "Jack is exactly what this division needs, someone with practical knowledge and genuine passion for conservation." Gregory's cold eyes assessed Jack. "Perhaps, but there's the matter of fitting into corporate culture. Our clients and partners expect a certain level of professionalism." The implication was clear. Gregory didn't think a wilderness guide belonged in their world. Jack felt his dislike for the man growing. "The Tokyo call, Olivia," Gregory reminded her. "They won't wait." Olivia sighed. "I'll be there in a minute." After Gregory left, she turned to Jack. "I'm sorry about that. My uncle is very protective of the company. He's been running it since my father died, and he's not happy about handing control to me next month." Jack nodded. "It's okay. He's right that I don't fit in here." "Don't let him discourage you," Olivia said. "This job is real, and I want you for it. Let me finish this call, and then we can talk more over lunch." After Olivia left, Jack wandered to the window. The view was amazing, miles of mountains and forests spread out below. In the distance, he could see the areas they had shown him on the maps, land that Fort Industries had set aside for conservation. Curious about the rest of the building, Jack left the conference room and walked down the hall. Most of the offices were empty, with their occupants at lunch. At the end of the hall, he found a room with maps on the walls and a large table in the center. Spread across the table were more maps, these marked with red lines and notes. Jack looked closer and realized these were the same wilderness areas the environmental team had shown him, but these maps showed something very different: roads, buildings, and what looked like mining operations. The plans were labeled Phase 1 Development, Post-Acquisition. Lost, Mr. Miller? Jack turned to find Richard, the security head, watching him from the doorway. Just looking around, Jack said casually. Interesting maps. Richard stepped into the room and quickly rolled up the maps. These are confidential company documents. This area is restricted. Are those development plans for the conservation land? Jack asked directly. Richard's face remained neutral. I suggest you return to the conference room and wait for Ms. Bennett. Jack held his ground. Does Olivia know about these plans? Ms. Bennett is still learning the complexities of the business, Richard said carefully. Some matters are handled by Mr. Gregory Bennett until the official transition of power. Jack understood then. Gregory was planning to develop the land that Olivia thought was being protected. The environmental division was likely just for show, a way to improve the company's image while they prepared to exploit the wilderness. Think I've seen enough, Jack said. Please tell Olivia that I had to leave. Richard nodded. I'll have a car brought around. As Jack was driven away from the fort, his mind raced. Should he tell Olivia what he had seen? Would she even believe him over her uncle? And why should he get involved in their family business? Yet he couldn't forget the passion in Olivia's voice when she talked about conservation. She truly seemed to care about protecting the wilderness. If Gregory was deceiving her, she deserved to know. By the time the car reached the bottom of the mountain, Jack had made his decision. He would not take the job. He belonged in the forest, not in corporate games. But he would find a way to show Olivia the truth about her uncle's plans before it was too late. Jack spent the next week gathering information. He hiked through the conservation lands that Fort Industries claimed to be protecting, taking photos of survey markers and equipment that shouldn't be there. He talked to local rangers who mentioned strange activities in those areas, men in suits examining the land, drilling equipment being moved in at night. He wasn't sure how to get this information to Olivia. She had called him twice since his sudden departure from the fort. But Jack had let the calls go to voicemail. He needed proof before he made accusations against her uncle. The answer came unexpectedly. While in town buying supplies, Jack saw a poster for the Fort Industries annual charity gala happening that weekend. The event would celebrate Olivia's 30th birthday and her official taking control of the company. It was being held at the fort and tickets were selling for $1,000 each to benefit wilderness conservation. Jack smiled at the irony. A conservation fundraiser hosted by people who were secretly planning to destroy the wilderness. He couldn't afford a ticket, but he had another way in. On the night of the gala, Jack parked his old truck a mile from the fort's main gate. He wore the only nice clothes he owned: clean jeans, a button-up shirt, and a jacket. He wouldn't pass for a wealthy guest, but he might pass for staff. More importantly, he knew the forests around the fort better than any security guard. Jack made his way through the trees, avoiding the main road and security cameras. The property was large, but he had studied maps of the area carefully. When he reached the edge of the landscaped grounds, he could see the fort lit up with lights. Cars dropped off guests in fancy clothes at the main entrance. Moving carefully, from shadow to shadow, Jack worked his way closer to the building. His plan was to find a service entrance. Before he could reach one, he heard a voice behind him. The guests usually use the front door. Jack turned to find Olivia standing on a small stone path. She wore a long green dress that matched her eyes, and her blonde hair was arranged in an elegant style. The gold locket still hung around her neck. "Olivia," Jack said, surprised, "I need to talk to you." By sneaking onto my property, she didn't sound angry, just curious. "You could have called me back." "I needed to show you something," Jack explained. "Something I found in your uncle's office." Olivia studied him for a moment, then nodded. "Follow me. There's a side entrance we can use." She led him along the path to a small door partially hidden by plants. Using a key card, she opened it, and they stepped into a quiet hallway. "My father built secret passages throughout the fort," Olivia explained. "He was a private man who sometimes needed to escape from guests." She led Jack through a series of hallways and up a small staircase. "Everyone's at the gala in the main hall. We won't be disturbed in my office." Olivia's office was a large room with glass walls offering a view of the mountains. Unlike the cold corporate feel of Gregory's office, this space was warm and personal, with plants, books, and photographs. "Now," she said, sitting behind her desk, "what was so important that you had to break into my home?" Jack took out his phone and showed her the photos he had taken, the survey markers, the drilling equipment, the maps he had seen in her uncle's office. "Your uncle is planning to develop the conservation lands," he explained. "The environmental division is just for show. Once you take control of the company, he's going to push these projects through." Olivia looked at the photos carefully, her expression unreadable. "You think my uncle is lying to me?" "I think he's waiting until after your birthday to show you these plans," Jack said. "He'll present them as necessary for the company's growth, something your father would have wanted." Olivia was quiet for a long moment. Then she reached into her desk drawer and pulled out a folder. She opened it and spread several documents on the desk. "These are the same plans," she said. "Gregory showed them to me 3 days ago." Jack stared at her in shock. "You knew? And you're okay with it?" Olivia shook her head. "I'm not okay with it. But I needed to understand exactly what he was planning before I could stop it." She looked up at Jack. "That's why I wanted to hire you. I needed someone who truly cares about the wilderness to help me fight this." "Fight your own uncle?" "Fort Industries was my father's legacy," Olivia said, touching her gold locket. "He built it to create things that helped people, not to destroy natural resources for profit. When he died, Gregory started changing the company's direction. I couldn't stop him until I had full control." She stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the dark mountains. "My 30th birthday is in 3 days. After that, Gregory will no longer have any power over company decisions." "And what will you do then?" Jack asked. Olivia turned to face him, her expression determined. "I'm going to transform Fort Industries. The environmental division will become our primary focus. We'll use the company's resources to protect wilderness areas, not exploit them." Jack wanted to believe her, but he had learned to be cautious. "That's a nice dream, but the board might not support such a big change." "The board works for me, not the other way around," Olivia said with a confidence that surprised him. "My father made sure of that in his will. As long as the company remains profitable, I have complete control over its direction. A knock at—" The door interrupted them. Olivia quickly gathered the documents and put them back in her drawer. "Yes?" The door opened and Richard stood there. "Ms. Bennett, your guests are asking for you. It's almost time for the speeches." "Thank you, Richard. I'll be right there." After he left, Olivia turned back to Jack. "Come to the gala. I want you to hear what I have to say." Jack looked down at his clothes. "I'm not exactly dressed for a fancy party." Olivia smiled. "You look fine. Besides, after tonight, things are going to change around here." She held out her hand. "Will you come with me?" Jack hesitated only briefly before taking her hand. "Lead the way." The main hall of the fort was filled with people in expensive clothes, drinking champagne and making small talk. A small orchestra played in one corner. As Olivia entered with Jack, conversations paused, and people turned to look at them. "Gregory." Bennett approached immediately, his smile tight. "Olivia, everyone's waiting for your speech." He glanced at Jack with barely concealed displeasure. "Mr. Miller, I wasn't aware you were on the guest list." "Jack is my special guest," Olivia said, firmly, "and my new head of environmental operations." Gregory's smile disappeared. We don't need to discuss it," Olivia interrupted. "In 3 days I'll have full control of Fort Industries, but I'm making this decision tonight." She squeezed Jack's hand, then walked toward the small stage at the front of the room. Gregory leaned close to Jack. "You don't belong here," he said quietly. "This is a world you don't understand." "Maybe not," Jack replied. "But I understand the wilderness you're trying to destroy. And so does she." On stage, Olivia tapped a microphone to get everyone's attention. The room fell silent as she began to speak. "Welcome to the annual Fort Industries Gala," she said. "This year is special. not just because it's my 30th birthday, but because it marks a new beginning for this company. She went on to talk about her father's vision and how Ford Industries would now dedicate itself to environmental protection and sustainable practices. As she spoke, Jack could see Gregory's face growing darker with anger. Tonight, Olivia continued, I'm announcing the creation of the Bennett Wilderness Trust. Ford Industries will donate 50,000 acres of land to be permanently protected from development. Gasps and murmurs filled the room. Gregory stepped forward as if to interrupt, but Richard placed a hand on his arm, holding him back. Leading this initiative, Olivia said, will be Jack Miller, our new Chief Environmental Officer. Some of you may not know Jack, but I do. He saved my life in the wilderness, and now he'll help us save the wilderness for future generations. All eyes turned to Jack. He felt uncomfortable with the attention, but stood tall. This wasn't about him. It was about protecting the forest and mountains he loved. After the speech, as guests crowded around Olivia to ask questions, Gregory approached Jack again. This isn't over, he said. The board won't allow her to throw away millions in potential profits. Jack shrugged. She seems pretty confident they will. Gregory stalked away, and a moment later, Olivia appeared at Jack's side. So, she said, with a smile, will you take the job now? Jack looked around at the fancy room, so different from his usual surroundings. It would mean spending a lot of time in places like this. Not necessarily, Olivia said. I was thinking the environmental headquarters should be somewhere more appropriate. Maybe a research station in the mountains, close to the wilderness we're trying to protect. Jack smiled slowly. That might work. 1 year later, Jack stood on the porch of the new Bennett Wilderness Research Center. What had once been the fort was now a place of learning and conservation. The main building had been converted into laboratories and classrooms where scientists and students studied ecosystem protection. Jack still spent most of his time in the forest, but now he had resources to do more good than he ever could have alone. And he had partners who shared his passion. The door opened behind him and Olivia stepped out. She wore hiking boots and practical clothes, her hair pulled back in a simple ponytail. The gold locket still hung around her neck. Ready?